This is my one Hokkaido pumpkin, or curry squash, K-U-R-I, red curry squash. Same creature as far as I know. Seeds for this were sent to me by David on the Work with Nature channel. I believe back when he lived in Switzerland. Anyway, I grew a plant out in the garden and one in the hoop house. The one out in the garden produced a couple of very small squash, and this one was the only squash that developed in the hoop house. It had numerous blossoms, but they were all male. I plan to save the seeds and try again next year. This year, a better garden bed I'm developing to grow these things in outside. But I've never eaten one before, but I'm just about to prepare it, I guess. Get a hand in there to give you an idea of the size. I weighed it, and I think it was like an ounce short of 8 pounds, as it is with the seeds and everything inside. I've been invited to help celebrate the United States Thanksgiving, which is tomorrow. A friend down in Roke's Bluff in Maine has invited several members of the walking group that I walk with every Sunday, and we're each bringing something to contribute to the meal. So I'm bringing a soup course, the appetizer soup, which I hope will be okay. It's a Hokkaido pumpkin coconut soup, and I found the recipe online. If you need to see the recipe, I'll put a link down below the video here. It's fairly simple. I don't think you'll take a couple of notes while I'm doing this. If you're interested in making one yourself, you really won't need to see the recipe, I don't think. It's a very simple recipe. I am doubling it. There are going to be 6 of us, I think, for dinner, and this recipe says it serves 4. Well, I don't have any idea how big a soup each person would get with 4. This is just an appetizer course, but I want to make sure there's enough, so I'm doubling it. I didn't realize, but I looked online at several different places, and they say you don't have to peel the Hokkaido squash. The peeling is quite soft, and I guess we'll just mix in with the squash after you cook it. I however, am peeling it. It has, like, whatever you want to call this, it's grown on it. In places like that, I wouldn't want that showing up in my soup. And I need 4 pounds. So I don't know how much of that squash it'll take to get 4 pounds once I peel and take the insides out of it. But we'll come back in a minute and I'll show you that after I've cubed it up and ready to make the soup. Well, I thought I would offer some seeds, but when I was just looking at the outside of the squash pumpkin here, I thought I'd better wait and see what's inside of it before I make an offer to give somebody some seeds. Well, that is a good size cereal bowl, soup bowl, whatever, full of pumpkin seeds, Hokkaido pumpkin seeds. I've got to yet clean them. Once I finish making the soup, I'll wash all of the pumpkin guts off of them and dry them. But if you would like to try growing one, if you've never grown this variety before, just send me a personal message with your mailing address, and I will send a few of them anywhere in the world. I say a few because I don't want the weight of the envelope to go over the first-class postage rate, but I should be able to send you 4 or 5 of these pumpkin seeds, and germination rate was excellent on the ones that I had last year and started this spring. So I think if you get 4 or 5 seeds, you'll be able to grow a few plants for sure. And I am certain that it didn't cross-pollinate with anything. They are an heirloom, open-pollinated heritage variety, and they were growing in my hoop house with a couple of varieties of summer squash, but I hand-pollinated this. And at the time that this particular blossom was being hand-pollinated, there weren't any male blossoms open on the other 2 kinds of squash in the hoop house. So I'm sure that it hasn't cross-pollinated, and if you're interested in some seeds, just send me a personal message with your address. I don't think I mentioned in the previous clip, I haven't started editing this together, so I'm not certain, but the offer of seeds is for anywhere. It doesn't matter which where you live. If you'd like to have 4 or 5 of these seeds, just send me a personal message with your mailing address. Well, that is 4 pounds, around 1,800 grams of Hokkaido squash or curry red pumpkin. No, that's exactly backwards, isn't it? Hokkaido pumpkin or curry red squash. It's much denser, more solid than I thought it would be. I thought, well, pumpkin is usually quite soft. This is really more like a squash. The skin was very thin, but nevertheless, this has been curing for, oh, I don't know, maybe close to 2 months since I picked it. And I don't think that skin would have just dissolved into the puree in the soup. I think you'd have found little hard things floating everywhere, so I'm glad I peeled it. But let's move on now to making the soup. Well, another good reason for making this soup is I found a use for my coconut oil. I don't know where you live, people that are watching this, but here in North America anyway, for the last couple of years at least, coconut oil has become a very trendy thing. One of those things that they tell you there's all kinds of health benefits for. You're probably going to live forever if you use coconut oil. Well, a couple of people that I follow were using it, so I saw it in Costco and I bought some. It comes like this. It's still called an oil. It's solid. Evidently there isn't a liquid form of coconut oil. And this is supposed to be organic and virgin pressing, the same as extra virgin olive oil and all that sort of thing. I wasn't expecting it to impart a coconut flavor. That's two tablespoons, by the way, going in the pan as it heats up. However, coconut oil tastes like coconuts, and you don't want your omelet or your egg or several other things that you're cooking to taste of coconut, so I haven't used it a great deal. This soup has a flavor of coconut to it, so coconut oil will work, I guess. As I say, I'm doubling the recipe, so that is 2 tablespoons of coconut oil melting in the pan. And I'm adding 5 teaspoons of pureed fresh ginger. And I buy the fresh ginger in the tube, which I presume has some preservatives or something added, but I find if I buy a hand of fresh ginger, it's withered up and gone before I find a use for it. So the tube has a shelf life of a couple of months or so in your refrigerator. For the single batch of this, it said 2 to 3 teaspoons, depending on how hot you want the ginger flavor to be. So instead of going with doubling that and going with 6, I've got 5 teaspoons in there. And it's just to start that cooking in the coconut oil. You don't want it to burn. Now you add your pumpkin squash. Okay. That was amazing. I managed to do that and didn't put one single piece of it on the floor. Just stir this around for a minute or so to distribute the coconut oil and the ginger. At this point I've got it on quite a high temperature. Stirring it constantly, it won't burn. And that's all it said to do, was to stir it for a minute or so I guess we've done that. And to this double batch you add a quart of water, 4 cups of water. Cover this. I'll let it come to a boil first, and then I will cover it and lower the temperature to a simmer and cook for 15 to 20 minutes until the pumpkin squash is soft. you back at that point. Well, the instructions were dead on. 15 minutes and it is cooked through and through, nice and soft. And I'm adding 2 teaspoons of sea salt, a scant 2 teaspoons. Remember, this is a double recipe. A single recipe would only have a teaspoon of salt in. And with the hand blender, puree, I guess. I didn't mention, but I had shut the heat off prior to doing this part of the process. I think that has it pretty much blended, I guess. Now you add 800 milliliters, which is 3 1/3 cups, if I am correct in my calculation, of coconut milk. And unless I have to get the blender back, and I don't think I do, I don't see any lumps of pumpkin that I didn't get pureed. Could have done this if you don't have a hand blender. You could have done this by putting it through a strainer, or if you have a kitchen mill like I've used a few times in the past. But as you can see, much quicker and very easy to do with a hand blender. You could also do it in a blender, the kind with the glass container, but this stuff is very hot, so I would do it small amounts at a time and hold a towel on the top of the cover to make sure the cover doesn't fly off and you get scalded. But that is the finished soup, unless it has to be adjusted for taste with seasonings, with some more salt or whatever. But I will meet you in the dining room. This is supposedly 8 servings, and I said we're going to be 6 for dinner tomorrow, so I can try it here myself to see what I think of it before I take it to the group of guinea pigs are going to get to eat it for the first time. I've never made this before. Well, the photographs online of the soup being served shows a whirl of either coconut cream or coconut milk or something on top of the soup, which would make it more attractive, and I haven't done that. I think, though, before I do try it, I'll add a little cracked pepper to mine. I thought it would be more overpowering coconut flavor, but it isn't. You certainly can taste coconut, but you also get the nice flavor of the squash, pumpkin, whichever you want to call it. I like that very much. And like most things, but I'm making this a day in advance because I wouldn't have time to make it tomorrow before I head out for the Thanksgiving celebrations, but most soups I find are better the second day. I would just refrigerate this, and tomorrow it'll have more flavor. But that is very good. So if you would like to grow a Hokkaido pumpkin or curry squash, red curry squash, once again, just give me your mailing address in a personal message here, and I'll gladly put some of those seeds in the mail to you. Thank you very much for watching.